for men who refuse to stay complacent. Welcome to the Upgraded Man podcast with your host, Chris Anderson.
All right, welcome back to another recording of the Upgraded Man podcast. I'm Chris Anderson, your host. Today, we're going to be diving into the mindset and living fully pillar of Upgraded Man. And so this is going to be a good one. It's going to be a deep one, talking about overcoming struggles, dealing with, negative news, poor health, things like that. So if you've ever dealt with anything serious in your health or someone you know has, and you've walked through that process of uncertainty, the hills and valleys with it, the emotional roller coaster, this one's for you. And if not, you can still hopefully get something out of this. So excited to have my new friend, Tim McDonald, on the show today, talking about his journey. Tim, welcome to the Upgraded Man podcast.
Great to be here, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you've got quite the story. So kind of give us the high level, overview of your story, what you're kind of passionate about talking about and helping others with now through that real quick.
Yeah, well, it was back in 2020. I was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer with metastasis to my liver, and my liver was covered. I like to say in scan terms, it's called a PET scan. It illuminates where the cancer is, and my liver was lit up like a Christmas tree. Nobody gave me too much of a chance to live past 3 years. And I just really took that news. It was a little bit of everything and nothing all at one time when I first heard the words, "You have cancer," but really just took it. And I'm a big believer in life that anything that happens kind of happens, that we're supposed to take something from it. And so it just took me a few days to understand what this meant for me personally. And I quickly learned that I just wanted to make sure that my friends and family weren't going to have to go through something that I was about to have to go through. And so I just started creating awareness and sharing my story and letting people know the importance of getting screened for colorectal cancer. And that kind of led into me getting into advocacy and learning that that's what I was doing all along, was even creating awareness as a form of advocacy. And it kind of spilled out into there, where I'm doing a lot more of it now, helping other patients in a lot of groups, going to Capitol Hill, advocating for advances in funding for colorectal and chronic disease patients, and pushing for affordable and accessible healthcare for everyone. And then also doing research advocacy, where I'm involved as a patient perspective on programs that are developing treatments, drugs, medical devices, technologies to help other patients. And really, I love that aspect, even though I'm not a technical or researcher, just because it really has the impact to help millions of people in the future.
Yeah. So walk me through that. You're sitting there, the doctor comes in, gives you this news. I know you kind of mentioned it there, but kind of dig into those emotions a little bit more. What was that process? I can't imagine.
Yeah, I want to be clear here, because what I'm about to say is not going to be your typical response. And this wasn't something that just happened this one time. It was work that I've been working on for over a decade at that point, where I was really working on mindfulness, consciousness, breathing techniques and everything else to really help control some aspects of my personality that I didn't like, i.e. my temper. And so I'm going to say what I'm going to say, but I don't want people to think, oh, he's not telling us the truth, or he's not being honest with us, because this is how I was. It was very matter of fact to me when I was told, "You have cancer." I was just sitting there having a conversation with my doctor, just like I am with you right now. And when he said this, he even thought something was wrong with me, and asking if I needed to call my wife, if we needed somebody to walk me home, whatever it was. And I said, "Why are you asking me these questions?" And he said, "Well, you're not acting normal." And I said, "Let me ask you a question. If I act any differently, would it change what you just told me?" And he said, "No." And I said, "So why should I act any differently in response to what you just told me?"
Yeah.
And then he kind of dropped it from there. But my biggest thought in my head was not about me. It was about, how am I going to tell my wife when I go home? Because I know we are two very different people, and she's a lot more emotional, and she's a lot more Um, she takes things a lot heavier than I do, bad news especially.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really the first thought in my head was, okay, I just need to figure out for myself what I need to do now and next. But for her, it was going home and being able to talk to her and tell her what had just happened.
Yeah.
And long story short is this urgent care doctor ended up calling a GI surgeon that he had worked with in the ER to get me in that same day. This is back in
Oh,
2020. So, I mean,
yeah.
everything was appointment only, no elective surgeries. We were going through COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So he personally called somebody he knew, got me in to see him that day. So I didn't have the luxury of time in telling my wife what was going on. I needed to
Wow.
get home, tell her, and then leave to go to this doctor. And so literally, I think it was the best thing for me because I couldn't let it simmer
Sure.
and put it off. I just had to go home and say, I have cancer. She started crying. She started getting emotional. And I just said, listen, we just need to go to a GI doctor right now. That's what I know. I can't
Mm.
answer your other questions. All I can do is tell you what we need to do right now. And so we got in a car, we drove down there, got my colonoscopy scheduled, and you needed your negative COVID test and everything else. Got that done, and that was it. So, but really, that was the main emotions that I was going through was kind of this. In all honesty, Chris, it was almost one of these things like when you don't know anything about cancer, it's one of these things where you're just so naive that you really don't almost knowing nothing is better than knowing something,
Yeah.
because if you know something, your mind can go in all these different places. I didn't know
Right.
anything other than I knew it wasn't good, but I
Yeah.
didn't know what that meant. And so I think that really helped me being so naive about cancer at that particular moment that it
Mm-hmm.
really helped me process things in a much more rational mindset.
Interesting. So then you find out it's really not good news, and the doctors almost are giving you a time frame that's quite short, in the grand scheme of things. How did that conversation happen or go? Like when they're, hey, I think you only have 3 years, or is that kind of how that went?
Yeah,
Or
well, it wasn't that first. The urgent
right.
care doctor just told me that I had cancer that spread to my liver. I had spots on my liver. I needed to go see a GI surgeon. The GI
Okay.
surgeon didn't say too much to me other than that they took a biopsy and we'll see what's going on in my liver. And I said, well, let's just hope those spots aren't cancer. That's how naive I was
Uh-huh.
at the time. And he goes, well,
Sure.
we can hope. And a nurse was like holding my hand and praying for me and telling me, oh, you're so young, all this stuff. But then I saw an oncologist, my first oncologist, and this was all because of these connections that I had made from the urgent care doctor. He was about 45 minutes from my house, and he was great, gave me some great advice, but he just said, he didn't give me any timeline either. He just said, he was talking about success. So I was in the mindset that success as a patient meant we're going to get this cancer out of my body. That's what I was thinking. I quickly learned that in medical terms in oncology, success doesn't mean the cancer is gone. It means that there's no spreading or growth. So
Right.
that's like one thing that I had to learn. But it wasn't until he referred me to another oncologist that was closer to my house so I could get my infusions every 2 weeks closer without having to drive all that distance. I walked into her office and her first things out of her mouth was, I don't know why this guy had you on this chemotherapy. It
Uh-huh.
causes neuropathy, which is your nerve endings get killed in your feet and your hands,
Uh-huh.
basically. And, I'm going to put you on this chemo and give you the highest quality of life because you only have 3 years left to live.
Oh,
And
geez.
the immediate thought in my head, I didn't say these out loud, but my immediate thought, it's still so clear today, is that's your story, not mine.
Mm.
I'm like, I'm not succumbing to the fact that I only have 3 years to live. I might only have 3 years to live, but I'm not living by that story. And my wife was not allowed in that appointment. And I'm glad she wasn't because I'm afraid of what she would have done to the doctor who told
Yeah.
me that. But we walked out. She was in the waiting room and we walked out. I waited till we were on the elevator going down. I told her, she started getting all emotional again. I just put my hands on her shoulders and said those words out loud. That was her story, not mine. I am going to find a way to beat this. And
Yeah.
that was the mindset that I had the whole time.
Wow. And so obviously it's been 6 years. So that's
Almost
great.
6 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, how did life change? I'm sure you're living one way and then this happens. Does it change your outlook on life? Did you already have what changed after this diagnosis?
Yeah, it's I kind of equate this as to when and especially I can realize it now as like a grandfather, to my two grandkids. It's like when your kids are growing up, you don't notice the changes in their growth, right?
Mhm.
But when you're not in the same household and you don't see those kids every day and you only see them every few weeks or every couple of months, all of a sudden it's like big changes, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, how big they've gotten, or look at their teeth that they lost, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think going through cancer journey, looking at it now, I don't feel like I changed that much. But if I really dissect it, I changed drastically. And really, I think from the standpoint of a couple ways. One was what's important in life.
Yeah.
And it's not the material things, it's the people and the experiences and what you do.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with what you can physically possess. It's about who we connect with and how we connect with them. I think the second thing is that my calling really was before that, because of what I do professionally, which is online community building, was really, I was connected with a lot of marketers, communications professionals, everything else. And now I'm connected with a lot more cancer patients and healthcare, chronic healthcare people, and doctors and nurse practitioners and oncologists and surgeons. That's who my connections are now. And I love it because I feel like when we're in our profession, you're in this echo chamber of what that profession thinks and the way that they think and the way that they do. The thing I love about this is I start to get to know these professional people, whether you're a professional patient or practitioner. I get to know them not only for what they do, but also who they are as people. Because at the underlying thing, I think what we all share is what's important to us, because we know that life is short because of the diseases that we have. And so we're starting to share things in a much more human way that makes me feel so much closer to these people than I did with some of these superficial people at work before. And I think that's like a major change in me. But then I also think it's really understanding too about how finite life is.
Yeah.
And I knew that before, but I think the reality of knowing that I probably only had about 3 years, maybe 5 years to live, that to me was really like showing me like, and I kind of always believed this, Chris. I saw it when I was younger. You have people work their entire lives, they plan on retiring and traveling, and then they die, and they never get to do what they were working their entire lives to do. And
Right.
so my thing now is, and I did this even during treatment. I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I want to go here. Let's go. And we figured out a way to make it happen. And we did it. I adjusted my infusion schedule and we just traveled. We love traveling. We love getting away and experiencing different cultures. And that's what we did. And
Yeah.
so now I live kind of my life a lot more about doing rather than planning.
That's awesome. I'm gonna pause real quick because I think my camera's froze, but I'm gonna come back to how your choices have changed. So when we come back to that, I want to make sure that's where we left off.
No, no problem. I was wondering if you were just being really still or not.
Let's see if that fixed it. Nope. I'm not sure what is happening. We've had so much tech issues today. Hey,
Oh,
did that fix it? Okay, maybe that fixed it.
yeah. Looks like it's working again.
Okay, cool. I just had to, yeah, okay. Sorry about that.
No, no problem.
Phew. Oh, technology. All right. So that what changed? Like, what did you notice any besides traveling? Because I know you said you schedule things so you could travel more. Were there anything choices wise that, like, what you would have chosen in the past was different now because
Yeah.
of this diagnosis?
Yeah. One was who I decided to associate with and take
Okay.
calls from. You know, before, and I still am a very open person about connecting with people,
Mm.
but I think I quickly learned that I don't have time for people that are either going to just be so superficial with me or are trying to tell me how I should help myself. You know, because one thing I've learned about all these types of people is almost none of them ask you what you're wanting. They all tell you what they think you should do.
Yeah.
And so I quickly learned that I don't have time for this BS, you know? And I'm polite, but I'm going to cut it off and I'm going to not pursue that path or that conversation. So that was like number one. I think the other thing for me too was really about, and this is my mindset, and this is part, in all honesty, that I wish I still was as good as I was while I was in treatment. I'm trying to get it back, but it's not as easy when you have everything else going on, because during treatment, my sole focus was on getting healthy.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, nothing else. That was my focus. Even though I was working, I was doing some other stuff. It was like, you know, my main focus was my health. Now I have a job. I got my podcast. I write, you know, I do all this other stuff where, you know, I'm involved in so many groups in my advocacy. And it's like, I don't have time to stop and just focus on one thing. I focus on so many different things. But focusing on one thing, I think really helps you understand what's important.
Yeah.
And, you know, so many times I think in our heads, we start stressing out about something. And I don't mean like, you know, like clinical stress, but I just mean like, you know, we start obsessing over why didn't that meeting go as planned? Or why didn't my wife put away the dishes that I like her doing? Or, you know,
Yeah.
just little
Uh-huh.
stupid things like that. And all these things, what I've quickly realized is if it started consuming time in my head because I knew time was so precious,
Yeah.
I would ask myself, am I going to be thinking about this an hour from now, a day from now, a week from now, or a month from now? And if
Mm.
the answer to any of those was no, I just reminded myself that it shouldn't have any space in my head right this minute because it's taking away from the time that I have.
Yeah.
And it was almost like automatic when I was going through treatment. Now I actually need to go through that process and have that conversation with myself again, because it is something with everything going on. You start like thinking, oh, I need to get this done. I need to send this out. I need to respond to this person. And all these things just kind of like take space in your head while you're really losing the moment that you're in at this particular time.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. We give so much time and thought to things that some things aren't even real. They haven't even come. We spin it all in our head and play all these scenarios, and we waste so much time and energy when these things don't even happen. And I think that's a good thing to remind people of. And how did you go about? You know, you said prior to this diagnosis, you had built a good mindset and mentality and all that. How did you do that? Were there anything specifically that you practiced or worked
Yeah,
with
well, I
to
want to
build
share
that?
two things. I'm going
Yeah.
to share the second thing first because what you
Okay.
just said actually reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Is I was working, this is well before my diagnosis, with a guy that I know I'm friends with who was becoming a coach. And one of the exercises that he wanted me to do was this journaling exercise where you have a conversation with your ego, you know, that voice in your head, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
um and all it is like a playwright, you know, where it's like you say this, your ego says this. Now he positioned it that you should call your ego God. I'm not
Okay.
a very religious person. I
Okay.
didn't want to do that because it wasn't true to who I was, so I just called mine ego or
Gotcha.
fear or whatever you wanted
Uh-huh.
to call it. But it needed a name, and you were you. And as you were having this conversation, you just wrote it out on a piece of paper. And there was only three rules. One was you needed to ask permission to talk and have the conversation. Two was that you needed to thank it at the end. And the third thing was you needed to ask permission, no matter what happened, that you could talk to it again in the future. And so that's basically the scenario. But what I found for me personally was a trend that every time I went through this exercise, what I started realizing is my ego was telling me not to do certain things, or, bringing up certain aspects that I was thinking about, because it was trying to protect me. And when I asked about that protection, because it had done this, I recalled situations in the past where it had done this, and every situation that I remembered ended up being much better than as bad as I thought it was going to be in my head. And so what I reminded my ego was of those situations. And basically for me, the way it always ended up happening was I'd say, thank you for trying to protect me. Just, I'm asking your permission. Let me give it a chance, see what happens. And if you were right, I will humbly come back and tell you that you were right. If not, I just hope that you'll be willing to have a conversation with me in the future. And that's how I ended it. And usually what happened was I stopped obsessing about these things that I was worrying about and holding back from doing, and then started making progress and moving forward as soon as I had those conversations. And that was just such a mentally freeing exercise to understand why these voices in our head are trying to hold us back. It's coming from a place of protection, but it's not a valid place of protection. So that was number one.
Okay.
But that was the second thing I did. Now and to be honest, I do these things in my head, like in seconds, instead of taking like 20 minutes or a half an hour now, like when writing them out on a piece of paper.
Right.
But it took that repetition of doing that over and over again to get to the point where I'm at now, which is one thing I want to preface. None of the stuff I talk about is just, you don't just flip a switch and this stuff happens. Practice,
Yeah.
So the other thing that I did, and this is when I was working at HuffPost when Ariana Huffington was still there, and this is when I started getting involved in like mindfulness and consciousness and breathing. And I talked with a lot of the people that were her friends that were in our blogging network. And I think I was crazy because I was trying all this stuff and wasn't working the way that they said in the books or anything like that. And they're all like listening to me and going, Tim, you are reaching levels of consciousness that most people dream of achieving. And I was like, but wait, I'm not doing it the way that they said. And they're like, it doesn't matter how you do it. It's the fact that you're doing it. And what you're telling us is where people want to get to, and you're getting there. And so, but one of the things that they had told me was, they asked me, what's one thing that you don't like about your personality right now? And I said, my temper. And my wife was usually the one who was the bearer of my temper, because we lived under the same roof together. If I got upset, might not have anything to do with her, but if I got upset about something, she was usually the one who heard about it. And I did not like the way that made our relationship happen. She didn't deserve that. I shouldn't be doing that to her. I knew that, but when my emotions flared up, that's what came out. Okay. And I hated that about myself, and I wanted to change it. And so it's going to sound so simple, but all they told me was, when you feel those emotions coming up, count to 10.
Yep.
And I got to be honest, Chris, the first couple times I did this, I couldn't get to 1. And I think this is where most people stop. They give up because they're not seeing success, right? And that is progress. If you're recognizing that you're not getting to 1, keep going and trying to get to 1. Don't make 10 your goal at first. Make 1 your goal at first. Yeah. And then it became like 3 seconds, and then it became 5 seconds. And then soon enough, I was at 10. And what I realized when I got to 10 was all those emotions that boiled up were now subsided back down. And now my brain could think rationally instead of irrationally. And I am a big fan of, I know Einstein's credited with the saying, insanity is trying the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Yeah. And so if I'm reacting the same way each time, why should I expect something different to happen, right? But if I try something different, I don't know how it's going to turn out. So maybe just try now a different approach, a different response, a different saying, and see what results from it. And almost always they were much more rational, much more calm, and coming at a place where we started having conversations about what I was feeling instead of me attacking her for how I was feeling. Yeah. And that to me is one of the things that I really try and focus on now. I don't have these episodes nearly as much, but whenever it happens, I just got to remind myself, and it doesn't have to be my temper too. Anything that kind of boils my emotions up, just trying to count to 10 and bring myself back down again.
Yeah. And then those are great ones definitely to implement, especially counting to 10. It's crazy how that actually works. If you just take a moment of like, and can get to that point, even starting to count at all, it's like, why am I getting mad? Like, what is this really? It's like, it changes a lot of the, man, a lot of people could do that, myself included, in the car, man.
Oh yeah.
Someone cuts you off instead of
Road
yelling out
rage.
through the
Yeah.
window. Yeah, just counting. I need to do that one in the car a little bit more, but yeah. And I'm curious too, like, how has that helped your wife through this process with you having this kind of mentality and mindset built up? Because obviously you said, she has a more emotional response. How has she shifted, or how has she changed and grown?
Oh, she has changed and grown so much, especially since I was diagnosed. But
Mhm.
I think really what she's come to realize, and even during, and I know we talked about this before, so I'll just bring it up now. I just had all my scans are still clear, but I did have a positive blood test, which means that there's cancer back in my body, but we're not sure where or what type of cancer it is. So
Okay.
for right now, we're just in that state. And I was messed up for a week, right? Like
Yeah.
mentally. And she was kind of my rock during that time.
Mm.
Now, during my first diagnosis, like I said, I was the rock. She was in the bad place. And
Yeah.
so to see that growth in her from when I was first diagnosed to now has been tremendous. She has really started to understand that, and really we've come together about like what's important in life, that we want to be together. We want to do this together. I couldn't do it without her. She can't do it without me. We understand that we're a team in this approach. And, and she understands that when one of us is hurting and not doing as good, that the other one needs to be there to help pick them up and carry them. And that to me is so important and so valuable. And I think in any relationship that we have, that it's not all one-sided, it's two-sided. And that is how she's changed. And I think a much better way for our relationship.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's so cool to see other people, see them grow and see them positively change. But, in that moment, right? Gave you 3 years, it's been 6, and then feel like things are going good, I'm sure, maybe. And then you get this new news. Walk us through that conversation and those emotions that you're feeling in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you that, at 2 years, we moved my scans from 3 months to every 6 months.
Okay.
And after this last appointment, because the blood test takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get the results from, where your scans are usually within a couple hours.
Right.
And
Okay.
so I met with my oncologist after I had my labs done and my scans done. And he was even talking about, I think we can move you to every year. Now, my transplant, I had a liver transplant. So my
Okay.
transplant team wants you to go to 5 years before you go to every year scan. But just to give everybody the understanding, this is the mindset I was in. I went from 3 months to 6 months, and now my oncologist is talking about moving me to every year. Then I get a call from my PA, my physician's assistant, telling me that the ctDNA, the circulating tumor DNA test, which is the blood test, came back positive, which means that there's cancer cells that have shed DNA that are circulating in my bloodstream.
Yeah.
Long and short, I mean, I don't want to get too technical here, but that's
Sure.
like the definition of it, because I'm a firm believer that I shouldn't use terms that most people don't understand. So,
Sure.
but that's it. Now, at first I was just like, okay, well, we'll just retest, and maybe it was a false positive. And, then we tested again, and sure enough, it was positive again. We did more scans, more detailed scans. Those scans are still clear. So now I'm kind of in this limbo game. But that first week after hearing that news that I had a positive test again, really kind of just messed my head up a little bit,
Sure.
and I started going back into all these what ifs.
Yeah.
And that when I was originally diagnosed, I said I didn't go there, right? And I was like, so good. But I think it was just the shock of going in 180 degrees from where my last appointment was with my oncologist just a few weeks ago to now hearing that the cancer is back. And now we're going to have to bump scans back up to every 3 months and even sooner in some cases. And so my thought was, I really don't have to want to go back on chemo again. I don't want to have to go through all this. I just remembered the toll it took on my body, how fatigued I felt. And I have so much energy now and I have so much stuff going on and I love what I'm doing. It doesn't even feel like I'm working. I don't want to lose this.
Right.
And then I realized after about a week of feeling sorry for myself, I guess is the best way to say it, right? Is that nothing had changed other than one data set. That's all that had changed. Nothing in my life had changed. I wasn't going through treatment. I wasn't starting anything. I wasn't having surgery scheduled. Nothing else had changed other than one number on one piece of paper. And all that meant was we needed to change how we were going to scan and monitor this moving forward. That's all it meant for right now. And why worry about the what ifs? Because we don't know what those what ifs are until they happen. And so just get back to a place of living in the now, being present, enjoying the moment, and not worrying about what the future may entail.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's hats off to you. I couldn't imagine. And that has to be such a shock, and to be able to navigate that, takes strength and can't be easy at all. But I'm also curious too, like kind of going back to the original diagnosis, what led you? That's kind of a question that popped in my head. What led you to the urgent care that made them even look for these things? Were you having certain signs and symptoms, or is it just?
Well, this is my part of advocacy now, is because I will say I was your typical guy, who didn't really go to the doctor regularly, didn't really, if I got a bump or a bruise or thought something was sprained, it would take me at least a few days, maybe a week to go have it checked out if it was still hurting. And what had happened was during COVID, I started having these weird feelings, and I'm going to list all of them, and everybody's going to listen and go, how did he not know that he should go get checked out? But these weren't happening, at the same time. They were all like just different things happening. But I had significant weight loss, but I had, for the first time in my life, went to give blood, and I couldn't give it because my cholesterol was high. And so I went on the DASH diet from the FDA, and it was mostly like grains and whole foods, no processed foods, and fruits and vegetables, and no sugars. And I was strictly eating that. So I thought my weight loss was from the diet. It was explainable. I started having these weird back pains, but they were only like, maybe once every week or 2 weeks. It wasn't like anything consistent. And then I would just start feeling like kind of almost like I had the flu kind of thing, but without like a runny nose or a cough or anything, just like really just kind of fatigued a little bit and not feeling great. And it always seemed to happen like on a Tuesday night. And I only know this because I was taking an online course during that time, and it was on Tuesday nights, and I started feeling bad during the course. And I'm like, well, maybe it's the course I'm taking and not anything else. But then the other thing too is I could not get warm inside in Florida. I live in Tampa, Florida, and it was, obviously still warm in October, November. And I could not get cold inside or warm inside. I needed to go outside in the sun to warm up. I couldn't put enough sweatshirts on and everything in the air conditioning to get warm. And then at night, I started having occasionally night sweats. So, a lot of symptoms that you would think women going through menopause have, I was kind of experiencing at that time. And it wasn't until Thanksgiving, when I had a really severe pain in my right side, that I told my wife, I think I need to have this checked out. And I didn't go on Thanksgiving. I didn't go on Friday, even though she was asking me each day. But on Sunday, when she got up, I said, I made an appointment to go to urgent care. And she goes, I thought you weren't going to wait until Monday. And I said, it just got too bad. I need to go now. And that's what brought me into the urgent care. They ordered a CT scan on Monday. That's what diagnosed me, was the CT scan. But since I did it kind of unusually, like usually you see you get a colonoscopy and they detect it that way. I got it detected by a CT scan and then went and had my colonoscopy. And when they did that, they put a stent in, because my tumor in my colon was almost blocking my colon off. And so they
Oh,
put a
wow.
stent in to open it up so I could still pass stool through my colon.
Were you having issues, like, going to the bathroom and stuff that you didn't notice before, or?
Not really.
Really?
I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, and not to go too gross here, but I mean, my entire life since I was in my 20s, I would say that I've never had what's considered normal poop.
Oh,
I've always
right.
had like, it's always changed and varied,
Mhm.
from diarrhea, very loose
Yeah.
to, very solid and smooth. So it's been everything all over the gamut through my entire life. So I didn't notice anything different. And there definitely wasn't visible blood in my stool that is kind of a telltale sign of you having
Mhm.
colon cancer. But these are all reasons that you should pay attention to all these symptoms because they are all symptoms of cancer. And if you do experience any of them, I am so much different. You asked me how I changed earlier, Chris, and I
Yeah.
didn't say this, but I am the type of guy, if I have one little thing that feels off in my body, I go find a specialist and I have it checked out
Yeah.
right away now.
Interesting.
I don't wait. I don't sit on it. I am taking care of my health. I am looking at it because I have come to learn that regular checkups, early detection is the best medicine.
Yeah. And, yeah, so, like, obviously, how often, because, we have exams that can be done. Is there an age now that those should start for colorectal cancer now or prostate cancer and things like that you recommend?
Yeah. So when I was diagnosed, the age was 50.
Mhm.
And shortly after I was diagnosed, it dropped down to 45. And
Okay.
it is becoming the leading cancer
Yeah.
killer of people under the age of 45. So
Right.
they are even thinking of dropping it again to 40 and making more. And this is something that I advocate for on Capitol Hill, is doing more research so we can find out why it is
Why?
impacting so many younger people.
Yeah, because 'cause I've seen that too. So, like, colonoscopy, prostate exam, right? Those are the big ones. Are there any other testing that people could do on their own, like mail-in? I've seen some mail-in ones. Like, are those legit or?
Yeah, I mean, there's like the Cologuard
Yep.
test
Mhm.
where you poop in the box. I mean, they
Yep.
got some funny commercials, right? And I
Yeah.
think Saturday Night Live did a skit on them that was hilarious.
Uh-huh.
But there's Cologuard. There's now in the last couple of years, and there's more coming out now. Blood test that can
Okay.
detect certain cancers, including colorectal cancer. And so really, if you are not at risk, meaning
Yeah.
you don't have symptoms or you don't have a family history, your doctor will probably order a Cologuard test or one of these new blood tests that are coming out.
Okay.
Now, if you test positive with one of those, then they will order a colonoscopy for you
Gotcha.
and you will go get a colonoscopy. If you
Okay.
are at risk for either of those things, they will go immediately to a colonoscopy.
Okay. Because so I do, like, yearly blood work just because I just wanted a baseline, wanted to just track things for any changes and stuff. I do actually through my Whoop, they do one, they get, like, 64 markers. Is that something that I don't feel like I have any symptoms, like, something would still be beneficial, like, either the blood test or the Cologuard? Is that still something you'd recommend for I'm 35, so.
Yeah, I would definitely say, I mean, here's the kind of the snafu when you're not of age
Mhm.
is you might end up paying for it out of pocket and your insurance
Gotcha.
won't pay for it, right?
Gotcha.
Unless if you're having symptoms. So most people won't. But if you're in a position where you can afford to do it, I would say it's not going to hurt. All
Yeah.
you're going to do is you're going to get more, kind of like you're saying, you're doing it now just to kind of establish where your baselines are.
Mhm.
Um, I would say, yeah, it's not going to hurt anything. If anything, it's going to find stuff that you can catch a lot sooner. And the
Yeah.
sooner you detect these things, the more treatable they are.
Yeah. Would you recommend the blood test versus Cologuard or Cologuard versus the blood test?
The blood tests are like so new, and
Gotcha.
it's hard for me to put my what I would personally do because I'm past that now. I'm not going to
Sure.
get either of those anymore. My wife gets the Cologuard test, and
Okay.
she will probably continue on the Cologuard test, even though there might be a blood test available for her to take now, just because she's familiar with it. It's been working for her. She knows, she knows what it is.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of personal preference between the Cologuard and the blood test. And if you are paying out of pocket because you're not qualified for insurance to cover it, it might be a matter of looking at what the costs are on each one and determining which one you
Gotcha.
want to go with from the cost
Okay.
standpoint.
But they both give you, like, they're both
They both perform pretty much the same.
okay.
I mean, as
Okay.
far as accuracy goes, yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. That's one thing, I have seen numbers like colorectal cancer is increasing in younger individuals. And like my mind goes to why? That's where my mind, like, why? Like, there's got to be a cause, right? There's got to be something.
I mean, there's a lot of theories out there, but honestly, there's not the research to support these theories
Yeah.
yet. Just common sense would say, look at the grocery store shelves and the number of SKUs that are on the shelves today compared to when I was a kid and when you were young. It has expanded immensely, and a lot of those foods are prepared, processed, and I would have to think that plays a major role in what's causing the colorectal cancer in
Yeah.
younger people.
Yeah. Diet, I think, is huge, obviously, because that's where everything goes through. So, you think it's less fiber? You think I've heard that there's less fibrous food people are eating leans
It,
into that?
it could be that. I just saw a research report yesterday that talked about 2 glasses of alcohol a day increases your colorectal cancer risk by 91%. I mean, so there's all these factors that come in, but then the alcohol thing doesn't really apply to the younger generation because you're hearing also that younger
You're
people
drinking
aren't
less.
drinking as much.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like,
Yep.
so it can be, I mean, I wish I could just sit here, Chris, and give you the answer to it. But in
Yeah.
all honesty, we need the dollars to do the research to figure out the why before we can start discussing how we're going to solve it.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And a part of me too, I've heard like, these things, these phones, right?
Yep.
People put them in their pockets, back pocket, front pocket, so consistently, and the radiation or whatever comes off of the phone. People are saying that that's one reason, or they're sitting the phone in their lap all the time, and there's just
Never
it's
know.
just
You never
crazy
know.
stuff. So yeah, I mean, with advocacy for it, what are some things you're guiding people to do more of to help lower their risk besides just getting tested? Is there anything you're kind of like, here are some other things you should do?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing is making people aware of when they should get screened, how they should get screened, the symptoms that they should be looking for. Those are the main things. But I also think like a lot of the advocacy that I do too in research, most of us think, research and we think of new drugs that they're coming up with. But
Right.
there's also research being done about how do we get more people screened, even in the age group that we're talking about, like that is covered for these tests.
Yep.
It does happen in more, middle to upper class neighborhoods. It seems to happen at a much higher rate than it does in underprivileged neighborhoods.
Interesting.
And so how are we going to get a higher rate in rural areas, in, these economically challenged areas? How are we going to get those rates up? And there is research being done, and there is proven ways to get this to happen. And so it's how do we now expand on these programs, right? Like,
Yeah.
and make this happen. So that's all part of the research advocacy too that I'm involved with, is really looking at that aspect of it, the testing and effective testing for people, and how we get that into more people's hands. A lot of the drug clinical trial research panels that I sit on with pharmaceutical companies, we talk, one of the big things is how do we reach diverse populations so that we know that A, they can test it against different populations, but B, we can get the message out so these people are getting screened for these tests. And so it's like, these are all major challenges and real challenges that we face. They're not over, they can't, it's not that they're not overachievable, but we need to come together and understand what works and then prove it to people, and then have people be willing to put the money up to be able to expand these programs to make it happen. Because I can guarantee you the money that we're going to spend on preventing people from getting this is a lot less than the money that we're doing on curing these people once they get the disease.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we definitely got to get more people tested and figure out what's going on, and it's just going to take time, unfortunately. But I just, with where we're at in the world, with all we can do and accomplish, you would think that we're going to figure out how to beat this thing fully. And I want to hope and believe, be positive that, there are a lot of people working on things in the background we don't know about yet, that we're getting close. I've got to believe it, right?
I think there's a lot out there right now, a a lot of promising things. I mean, I've worked last year on it's called the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, and it's run by believe it or not, most of our research is funded by the Department of Defense.
Interesting.
And so, but these are like kind of high risk, high reward type of programs that are being presented for funding.
Mhm.
And I did it last year, and it was amazing at some of the hypothesis that some of these researchers have and
Sure.
what they think could be. Imagine being able to determine what's in our gut right now. You
Yeah.
know, I'm just putting this in simple language terms, but what's in our gut right now today that will determine whether we're at a higher risk to get colorectal cancer in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, that amazing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like there's nothing like that right now, but imagine like having that. And these are the types of research programs that I'm seeing presented. So I do think that in our lifetime, we will probably see some major breakthroughs in curing cancer.
Yeah. I was going to say, have you seen any other cool case studies or things that they're testing? My mind goes to like nanotechnology, things like that, like T cell type immunotherapy type stuff. Is there anything that you've seen that's like cutting edge besides that one? Like, you're like, that's to even think of that. Anything
Well,
else?
I mean, as far as treatments go, there's so many different treatments that are even from when I was diagnosed, it's changed dramatically. Like, and I'm going to go in a little bit in the weeds here, but
Yeah.
when you have cancer, your tumors have what they call biomarkers, which is basically unique to everybody, but a lot of people have common biomarkers in their cancer cells. And one of them is you're either MSS or MSI.
Okay.
And the MSS is stable, and I think the other one's like unstable or something like that. I was MSS.
Yeah.
Most immunotherapies, when I was diagnosed, do not work on people that have MSS biomarkers. They only work with people that have MSI biomarkers.
Interesting.
So the interesting thing now today is that there's a lot more studies and programs out there where there are certain immunotherapies that are working very successfully with MSS patients. So just seeing that progress in the last 5 to 6 years
Yeah.
is really exciting, very exciting for people.
Yeah. And I think too, like, love it or hate it, AI, I think hopefully can be harnessed for good in some of these things and help us figure some of these things out too, hopefully. There's so much. And like, yeah, I'm hopeful, I always want the best for people. And I think we got to be getting close to solving some of these crazy things that are happening to help people. Yeah. Did you ever, this is another question I just kind of thought of. Did you ever have fear of like, I know you said this when they told you it's like 3 years, you're like, that's their story, not mine. Like, did you ever have a moment of fear of like, yeah, I might not make it like this? I don't know.
I definitely felt the feeling that I could die at any time.
Right.
And I did realize that. I think I was very content with where I was in my life. I didn't
Yeah.
want to leave my life. That was the biggest driver for me. And we had just had our first grandchild born right before I was diagnosed. And I wanted to at least see her be able to say pop up when she
Mhm.
was able to speak. Those were like, I had short term milestones that I wanted to
Yeah.
get to. That's what kind of drove me through. But I was very much at peace with the fact that if I did die, I wasn't gonna be sitting on my deathbed going, "I wish I would have done X."
Yeah.
I felt like I had accomplished so much in my life, that I had had the opportunity to do so many amazing things in my life, that I've connected with so many incredible people in my life, that if I were to go today, I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. I
know?
think, and that's big too. Cause like, obviously we can go at any time, right?
Yeah.
Car crash, heart attack, anything can happen, anything. And so building that mindset and that mentality like you have of, I'm going to live my life. I want to experience these things. I want to have calmness, and not let my emotions control me. I think for anything, diagnosed with cancer, feeling great, like it can all be over in an instant. So I think shaping our mindset around that and just like living life the best we can and to the fullest, I think is so critical because you can make more money, but you're not going to get the time back.
Nope.
And what are some big experiences you've done since this diagnosis that you might not have done previously that you're like, that was really cool. That was such a cool experience.
I can tell you that my wife and I are now making a European trip, annual experience for us.
Nice.
We just got back from our second European trip. We went last year for the first
Cool.
time, and we saw different places this year than we did last time when we went last year. We're already planning next year going for the Christmas markets, and in November when they open. So just those are like examples, but I also think it's really my attitude of, and I'm not saying this hastily or boastfully, but I really give zero fucks about a lot of things, and and I say that in all candidness because the bottom line is I'm not going to give you credit for trying to make me feel a certain way if I don't feel that way.
Yep.
And I just don't get too wrapped up over trivial things anymore. And that to me is like the greatest experience I think that I've had out of this whole thing is like just that freedom of being me and not worrying about what I think society wants from me.
Yeah. I love that. And that's something I'm trying to like incorporate. For the longest time, it's been, it is what it is, right? Some things it is what it is. And I'm not going to give so much energy to it. And then recently, it's not that deep. It's not that deep. A lot of things that we give so much energy and time and focus on, it's not that deep. It'll pass, right? We just focus too much on things that aren't that deep and don't matter. And
I think, Chris, for me, and I think I listened to one of your previous episodes that kind of touched on this too, but for me, it's that conditioning that we've been brought up with, right? And for me, it's like, it's almost more difficult to uncondition yourself from everything that you've learned than it was to learn it in the first place.
Oh yeah.
But that work is so freeing and liberating once you're able to do that and start to truly understand what's important to you, not what you were conditioned to believe was important to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. That's a good point. Yeah, it's so hard to change. We got to keep getting better. So, Tim, this has been a great conversation, and I appreciate you sharing and being open, and what you're doing with your advocacy and the lives you're changing and the people you're helping and affecting in a positive way. So you're using this not ideal situation help other people, and you're seeing the positive and taking the positive. So I appreciate that and what you're doing. And as we're kind of winding things down, what we've been doing on the Upgraded Man podcast is we have this Upgraded Man journal. And so every guest gets to leave a little something for the next guest in it, whether that be a quote, a comment, a question. So then I read the previous guest's, heading or what they wrote for you to respond to, and then you'll leave something for the next guest. And so we're at that point now. So our last guest was Nate Spangle. He's a founder of Get Indiana, big marketing agency podcast here in Indiana. Does amazing stuff. 29-year-old. He's crushing it. It's awesome. If you haven't checked it out, he's doing a lot of cool stuff for Indiana. So, but this is what he left. He left a quote. So I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to let kind of you sit with it, and you can respond however you feel, whatever pops in your head from this, and then we'll go from there. But his quote that he left for you in the Upgraded Man Journal was, "Dream so big it makes others uncomfortable, and be the hardest worker in every room."
I definitely like the first part. I don't know if I agree with the second part.
Yeah. Let's dive into that. So you like the first part. So what?
The first part I love because I really think that we are our own worst critics and we hold ourselves back more than anybody else does. And so I think when you dream big, don't discount it because what you think other people are going to think of you when you try it. Just go for it.
I love that. You never know where you're going to land, right?
You never know, but you'll never find out if you don't try.
Yeah.
So I love that part. Now, about being the hardest worker in the room.
Yeah.
I think that I used to believe that, right? I used to be the guy who showed up before everybody else in the morning. I stayed until I was one of the last people in the office. All that did was burn me out. it gave me stress. What I have learned is how to work smarter. And to me, it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter. But working
Yeah.
smarter allows you to do more.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't have to
100%.
be work, but it allows you to do more.
Yeah. Yes. So I love that. And I love that take because, and it's so funny because I like that quote, be the hardest worker in every room, but I also completely agree with working harder, not smarter. And it's so funny. I almost think there's like, it's the levels to it. Like when we're starting out, like when I started Elevate, when I started my podcast, like I had to work really, really hard. And that got things, that got the momentum, that got the success, that got to the certain levels. And then to your point, it got to the point where, hey, I can't work any harder. I can't give any more time without negatively affecting, my health or whatever. There's the ceiling. So now I can still work hard, but if I work hard in a smart way, I'm going to expedite what I can do. I'm going to increase what I can do by delegation, by focusing on what actually matters. So I love your take on it. I love the opposition to that because I think hard work starts the process, and then we have to figure out how to be smart eventually, or we will burn out.
Yeah.
And so I love that. I love that kind of pushback on that quote from you on that, because I think we need to kind of see both side of the coins there. And yeah, I agree with you on that one. You got to get to the point where you're working smarter, or you can't continue to go that hard anymore. So I appreciate that feedback on that and that perspective for sure. So what would you like to leave for the next guest I have on the show? Whether that be again a quote, just a comment, or even a question.
Yeah, I think I came up with a good question, I think. And I mean, I think obviously based upon my experience, but it made me really think about this personally, is what is something you survived that you never called surviving? And I think for men especially, I think this is a question that we need to go a little bit deep on this one, because we don't like to say that we survived a lot. And
Yeah.
so I think really diving into that would be interesting to hear what the next guest thinks.
Yeah, very interesting. So you're meaning like something that we overcame that we kind of brushed off?
Yeah, or I say, when I came up with this question, I thought
Yeah.
to myself, what would that mean for me, right?
Yeah.
And there's two different things. One was I survived. I didn't call it surviving my first marriage because I called it an obligation. I called it a commitment, even
Uh-huh.
though it was toxic and it drove me to depression. That is something that I survived without calling it surviving.
Okay.
I think the middle space between when I got diagnosed and where I am today came because I opened myself up to letting other people help me and carry me forward.
Yeah.
And I didn't call that surviving. I just
Yeah.
called that being.
Uh,
And so that was something else that I never called surviving, but I did survive because of those other people who were there to help support me and
awesome.
carry me.
Cool. Yeah, I love that question. I'm excited to see what my next guest's response to that will be. So thank you for that one. It's going to be a good one. Yeah, again, this has been, Tim, a great episode, diving into your story, your journey, building a strong mindset around all, things that happen that are negative sometimes, and how we need to live life fully no matter what we're dealing with. If you were to talk to someone, kind of to end things, if you're talking to someone 30s to 50-year-old right now listening, what would that one message you want them to hear? They're out there, they're working, they're trying to build a career to support a family, most likely, and they're trying to get that together. They're trying to keep living life. Maybe they've been diagnosed with something. Maybe they're on the same boat, or maybe they're just trying to figure out life. What would be a message you leave them with today?
I think that all of us have done tough stuff in our lives. And this is just another thing that we need to give ourselves credit for everything we've done that we're going to be able to handle moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
That's a good
really,
one.
I mean, I've had long conversations with guys who have been diagnosed and think that their life is over. They're going to become a different person. And I just remind them of all the things that they've gone through in their lives that were major changes
Yeah.
that they weren't even thinking about in this moment. And all of a sudden it puts it into their minds that I have done tough shit before. I can make it through this.
That's good. I think to remember where we've come and what we've come through in those moments to fight through another one, right?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. If people want to connect with you, hear more about your story, see your advocacy, where's the best place for them to go to do that?
Yeah, well, definitely. I have my podcast and blog on advocacyatwork.com. And that's one place that you can always connect with me on. And then LinkedIn's probably the other one, which is just Tim A. McDonald on LinkedIn. So those are the two places that would probably be appropriate to connect with me on. But if you Google me on, even though I got a very common name, if you just put advocate or cancer or something, my name's probably going to be the one who comes up. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, make sure you connect with Tim and follow what he's doing. And if you continue to learn and get support from him if needed. And if not, share this episode with someone who might need that. Someone who's going through something. Hopefully this will be a light for them to help them during that process. So we can help more people together by sharing the episode. So please do that. And make sure you follow the show if you don't already. It just helps us keep doing this and putting out episodes. So thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, continue to go out there, continue to upgrade, and we'll talk to you again soon.